At my wedding, a situation unfolded that I could hardly believe. My in-laws, having indulged a bit too much, became the center of whispered gossip among the guests. In a surprising outburst, they confronted me, loudly proclaiming that now that I was married, if I truly wanted to belong to their family, I needed to prove my financial worth. They demanded an additional $5,000 a month, echoing sentiments my father-in-law had previously expressed. The room fell silent. I was left stunned by their audacity, feeling the color drain from my face. Thankfully, my father intervened, taking the microphone. With a firm but calm voice, he addressed them, emphasizing the embarrassment they were causing. His decisive words brought some relief to an otherwise tense moment. My name is Betty Rachel, and I'm a 33-year-old woman engaged to Stephen, a 35-year-old man I met through a friend concerned about my prolonged single status. After losing my mother at a young age, my father took on the role of both parents, working tirelessly to provide for me. This loss deeply affected me, making me guard my emotions closely, and as a result, I rarely dated seriously. Despite my initial reservations about Stephen, his persistent care and respect gradually won me over. He was always a gentleman, and over time, his unwavering support allowed me to open my heart. Dating him brought happiness back into my life, making him incredibly special to me. As my relationship with Stephen deepened, I found myself imagining a future with him, and when he proposed, it felt like the natural next step for us. Stephen had always been incredibly understanding and kind. He would constantly reassure me, saying, "Don't worry, if you ever feel unsure about something, I'll be here for you until you feel better. I love you, Betty. You can always count on me." His words warmed my heart, and I knew I wanted to offer him the same depth of care and commitment. When I shared the news of our engagement with my father, his reaction was one of overwhelming joy. He even shed tears, exclaiming, "Wow, Betty, you're finally getting married. I'm so happy for you." I playfully called him dramatic, but it led to a touching conversation where he revealed his quiet fears that I might never settle down. That moment showed me just how deeply he cared. Thanking my dad felt especially meaningful, knowing how he had raised me on his own. I anticipated that the wedding would be an emotional day for both of us, probably with more tears from him, given how emotional he was now. With our engagement set, Stephen and I began the hectic journey of wedding planning. Balancing our demanding jobs with wedding preparations meant our weekends were packed, leaving little time to rest. But we managed to keep our spirits high, excited for the special day ahead. One of the most anticipated moments was finally meeting Stephen's parents. Although Stephen had already met my father shortly after the proposal, scheduling conflicts had delayed my introduction to his parents. Finally, a visit was arranged, and as we approached their house, I was filled with both excitement and nervousness, eager to see how this meeting would go. I felt a surge of nervousness, but Stephen was quick to comfort me. "Don't worry, my parents are very kind," he assured, helping ease my anxiety as we stepped into what would be a significant new chapter in our lives. When I rang the doorbell at Stephen's family home, his mother greeted us. "Mom, I'm home," Stephen announced cheerfully. She responded with a warm smile, "Welcome home, Stephen. It's so good of you to come." As she engaged in light conversation with her son, I introduced myself politely. "Nice to meet you. My name is Betty, and I'm Stephen's fiancée." Her demeanor shifted subtly as she turned to me, her voice dropping from the cheerful tone she used with Stephen, her smile fading. "So, you're Betty," she said, giving me a long, scrutinizing look that felt more like judgment than a greeting. She led us into the living room, and her cool attitude persisted. "Betty, I'm curious. What do you bring to the table? Stephen is our treasure, our only child. If you're going to marry him, you need to be a suitable wife. Are you worthy of him?" she asked sharply, her tone more like an interrogation than a question. I was taken aback by her sudden harshness and struggled to find words. "You're joining our family, you know. Are you ready for that?" she continued, her words carrying an almost ceremonial weight, as if marrying into her family required some monumental commitment. I wasn't marrying into royalty, so why such heavy expectations? As I pondered how to respond, her patience wore thin. "When I ask you a question, you answer right away. You're so rude," she snapped, her voice rising. Despite feeling overwhelmed, I managed to respond. "I hope that Stephen and I will support each other throughout our marriage." This answer didn't satisfy her, she retorted. "What a naive thing to say. You're not just going to support each other. It's your job as his wife to support him. You don't even understand the basics, she criticized harshly. At this point, Stephen's father, who had been quietly observing, stepped in. Honey, calm down, he interjected gently, turning to me with an apologetic smile. Sorry about that, Betty. You must have been startled by my wife's words. His calm demeanor attempted to diffuse the tension. As I tried to remain composed, I reminded myself that Stephen's mother was fiercely protective of her only son. Perhaps her sharpness came from nerves. Just then, Stephen's brother entered the room, his quiet, gentle presence momentarily soothing the atmosphere. But that peace quickly evaporated when he, with a disarming smile, voiced his support for their mother's harsh words. What my mother says is justified, he said. What concerns me most is that you come from a single-parent family. Confused, I asked, what do you mean by that? Being raised by just one parent doesn't have a good public image. We can't be too happy about someone like that becoming the wife of our only son, can we? He explained calmly. Hold on a minute, I began, as shock and anger flared inside me. I couldn't let his comment pass unchallenged. What's wrong with being raised by a single parent? My father worked incredibly hard to raise me on his own, and I'm proud of him and my upbringing. Being raised by one parent doesn't make me any less capable or valuable, I said, my voice firm. But they continued to argue. Since you were missing one parent, you couldn't have learned how to be a good wife, how to do housework and such, they claimed. I responded, refusing to let their assumptions diminish me. I did plenty of housework to help my father, and I can cook pretty well too. So please don't say that. Despite my rebuttal, Stephen's mother dismissed my words entirely. I will allow you to marry Stephen, she said, but in exchange, you must promise to devote everything to us because we are Stephen's parents. Can you promise that? I was taken aback. What? I stammered, unsure how to respond to such a demand. Since you came here to ask for our permission to marry our son, you do understand your duties, don't you? She continued, leaving no room for negotiation. Before I could gather my thoughts to articulate a response, the conversation continued, and it became clear that my in-laws were intent on dominating the discussion. I barely had space to express my views. That night, as I reflected on what had happened, I felt overwhelmed by the encounter and deeply unsettled by the dynamics I was about to enter. The evening had been a wake-up call, and I realized I needed to talk to Stephen about how his parents treated me. Stephen, do your parents always talk to people like that? I asked gently, hoping for some understanding or support. He seemed unaffected by my question. What about it? He replied, clearly not seeing the issue. I tried again, carefully explaining my concerns. Well, the way your parents spoke to me, and what they said, doesn't that seem unfair? Stephen shrugged it off. Oh really? They were just making sure you're ready for the marriage. I understood that his parents were concerned for their son's future, but their approach had felt excessive. It was troubling that Stephen didn't seem to see it the same way. I get that your parents are worried, but it felt like too much, I pointed out carefully. Really? Why is that? Stephen asked, his tone neutral. They didn't say anything wrong. Besides, they gave us their blessing to get married, so don't worry about it. His response troubled me. It seemed he was more in line with his parents' views than with understanding my feelings. Sensing my unease, Stephen wrapped his arms around me in a reassuring hug. Betty, you don't have to worry so much, he said softly. My parents are just a little upset because their only son is getting married. Though his words were meant to comfort, they only confirmed that he didn't fully grasp my concerns. It's all going to be fine. Don't overthink it. I'm sure they just want what's best for us. They want us to be as good of a couple as they are. That's why they were a bit harsh, he added. Oh, I replied, still feeling unsettled. Stephen seemed to think his parents' high expectations were normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't right for them to judge me simply because I was raised by a single parent. I didn't believe that people who expressed such views were truly supportive partners. We are the ones getting married, I thought, and our focus should be on our love, not their approval or disapproval. Although I was upset, I decided not to dwell too much on his parents' opinions. The wedding day soon arrived, and the venue was filled with our relatives, friends, colleagues, and even bosses. As I walked down the aisle, my father beside me, the man who had lovingly raised me on his own, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. Stephen and I exchanged our vows and rings, and the room erupted in applause. Despite the challenges, this was our moment, and I was determined to savor it. As Stephen and I walked back down the aisle together, the reality of our marriage sank in. filling me with a joy I had never experienced before. At the reception, the hall was bustling with excitement. Videos of our journey together played in the background, adding a personal touch to the celebration. It was a joyful time, reconnecting with friends I hadn't seen in a while and receiving heartfelt congratulations from so many people. Despite my initial reservations about Stephen's parents, the day had turned out to be one I would always cherish. I felt relieved and genuinely happy that I had chosen to marry Stephen. We planned to officially register our marriage after the ceremony, a step that would make our union legally complete. As the day unfolded, I savored every moment, basking in the joy and celebration. But when it came time for the formalities, greeting our guests and acknowledging everyone's support, a sense of unease began creeping in. Stephen's parents, standing beside us, were visibly unsteady, their faces flushed a deep red. It was clear they had indulged too much in the festivities, and some of our relatives quietly asked if they were all right. Though embarrassed, we pressed on, trying to maintain decorum. When it was time for us to address the guests, the situation took an unexpected turn. Without warning, Stephen's mother grabbed my hand, pulling me away from him with surprising force. Her voice boomed as if she were in a wrestling ring, not a wedding hall. "Listen to me, Betty. After this wedding, you're going to devote yourself to us completely. Prepare yourself. We're going to test you hard." The guests murmured, some laughing awkwardly as if it were a joke, but the tension was undeniable. Before I could react, Stephen's father seized the microphone and pointed at me. "Betty, don't you feel embarrassed wearing a dress like that? It doesn't suit you at all," he sneered. His mother nodded in agreement, piling on the criticism. The murmurs among the guests grew louder, turning from amusement to concern. I turned to Stephen, my eyes pleading for him to step in and stop his parents' humiliating outbursts. This was supposed to be our wedding day, a celebration of love, not a spectacle of disrespect. But Stephen stood frozen, making no move to defend me or our union. The situation escalated when his parents, still intoxicated, began making outrageous demands. "After you register the marriage, you should give us a few $1,000s a month, plus your entire bonus," they insisted, their greed blatant and shocking. I felt my face drain of color as I stood there, utterly stunned. My father, who had been watching the scene unfold, couldn't stay silent any longer. He stepped forward, taking the microphone from Stephen's father with a steady hand. "Enough of this," my father said calmly but firmly. "Don't you realize you're making fools of yourselves?" Stephen's parents, instead of backing down, lashed out, mocking my father for being a single parent. "Single parents are never any good," they jeered, their words cutting deeply. But my father didn't falter. His expression remained composed as he replied, "You people are worse than I imagined. You even refuse to meet me because I'm a single father." Then, with a twist that took everyone by surprise, my father revealed something that changed the tone of the room entirely. "I never imagined that someone like you would work for President Roy," my father said, his voice calm yet pointed. "President Roy is a respectable man, and I always assumed his employees would be just as decent." The mention of President Roy, a business partner of my father's and an old friend, visibly shook my father-in-law. His confident demeanor began to crack. My father continued, "And speaking of single parents, President Roy was raised by his mother alone." He let the weight of his words settle before delivering the final blow. "So, you just insulted the president of the company you work for." The realization hit hard. Stephen's parents' faces fell as they grasped the gravity of their mistake. The room shifted, the power dynamic completely reversed. My father-in-law, once bold and arrogant, now appeared small and desperate. "I apologize, sir," he stammered, his bravado gone. "Please, don't tell the president about this." He fell to his knees, pleading, an image that was starkly different from the domineering figure he had been moments ago. For me, this moment was pivotal. It revealed both the true nature of Stephen's family and the strength and connections of my own. But perhaps most telling was Stephen's silence. He stood there, unmoving, unwilling, or unable to protect me from his parents' outbursts. The painful realization struck me, Stephen might never stand up for me. As the tension in the hall reached its peak, guests, caught between shock and amusement, began recording the scene. My father, resolute and unshaken, turned to me. "No matter how much they apologize," he said firmly, "they can't take back their words." He looked me in the eye and asked, "Do you want to leave with me?" Without hesitation, I nodded. I took the microphone from Stephen's limp hand and with a steady voice, address everyone in the room. Thank you for the great entertainment, but there will be no marriage. I paused, making sure everyone, especially Stephen and his parents, understood. I'll return all the gifts and contributions you've made for this occasion. With that, I left the reception hall, my father by my side. As we exited, I caught a final glimpse of Stephen and his parents, shocked, dismayed, and surrounded by concerned relatives. Behind us, the room descended into chaos. Over the following days, I stayed true to my word. I returned the money and gifts, and to my surprise, many of the guests expressed their admiration for my decision. They commended both my father and me for our integrity and courage in such a difficult situation. The fallout from the wedding was swift and severe for Stephen. His co-workers, many of whom had witnessed the debacle, spread word of the incident. It not only tarnished his reputation but also highlighted his inability to stand up to his unreasonable parents. Embarrassed and unable to face his colleagues, Stephen resigned from his job. The repercussions extended to his father as well. Word of the incident reached President Roy, and he took swift action. Stephen's father was demoted and reassigned to a remote division of the company, a clear message about the company's stance on integrity and respect. Stephen's family found themselves increasingly isolated within their community, shunned by both neighbors and extended family. Their actions at the wedding had led to a social and professional downfall, a stark reminder that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences are unavoidable. In the midst of this chaos, my life began to take a new direction. The bond with my father deepened, and we spent more quality time together. One day, he broached a topic that caught me off guard. "Betty, are you interested in running the business?" he asked, his eyes filled with hope and sincerity. I hesitated, unsure. "Do you mean? Why don't you work towards becoming the president of my company?" he suggested, confident in my abilities. The idea was daunting, but his belief in me sparked a sense of purpose. "I'll do my best, I promise," excitement and nervousness swirling inside me. From that moment on, I shifted my focus entirely to my career. Romantic entanglements could wait. I was determined to prove not just to my father, but to myself, that I could excel. I dove into learning every aspect of the business, determined to lead with the same strength and integrity my father had always shown. Looking back on the wedding fiasco, it was clear that Stephen's family had been unreasonable, turning what should have been a joyous occasion into a spectacle. Thankfully, since the marriage was never officially registered, I avoided a legally binding mistake. Now free from the burdens of marital drama and in-law complications, I could fully commit to my career. It was liberating to realize that out of chaos had come clarity, a new direction for my future. I'm eager to see where this path leads, and I wish myself all the best as I embrace this new chapter. If you've stayed with me until the end, thank you for being part of this journey. I hope you found something valuable in this story. Stay tuned for more updates, and if you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing for the next chapter of my life.